But I think in Buddhist practice, we have some real opportunities. As I said, bringing awareness to who I am and what I want, bringing compassion to who you are and what you want, and then having some sense of responsible action in terms of taking care of each other in some way. So I think it's really being quite present, and that is what we're called to do. So, when I observe, when I just am aware of who I am as a sexual human being, as a gay man, at a certain age, and I think to myself, what is it I want? And what is it that I'm willing to take the next right step to have happen in my life? And then, do I really want that? We pick up, I was just recently in Los Angeles, and it's always interesting to me, if you pick up a magazine here, a gay magazine in our community, the ads inside are sometimes for cars or sometimes for clothing or whatever. And still, almost nobody has their shirt on. They can be selling accounting, but they still can't seem to afford a shirt. And for most of them, that's okay. But in Los Angeles, it's the other side of that. The magazines in Los Angeles, it's liposuction and plastic surgery and hair replacement and other replacements. And evidently nobody in Los Angeles County owns any clothing, because it's everything that's sold, from cars to all of that. And so I think part of it is, we're human beings, and those folks who design those ads and pay for them have a lot of evidence and science behind them. They know exactly what sells, right? And so now we have this notion of what sex is and what it should be and who we should be having it with and how it should be. And if it doesn't, you can take a pill to give you that 4-hour erection. And for almost everybody in the room, and I'm sure everybody in the room knows that would not be a good thing. Well, and plus you're currently on crystal methamphetamine, that also is another story. Still probably not a good thing, but you might be thinking that it is. But anyway, it's this notion of what is it we want, and what is it we've been told we want. What is it that I want now that I didn't want before, or I didn't want before that I want now? And that doesn't matter what our age is, whether it's 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70. It doesn't really matter. The fact of the matter is that it's fluid and it changes. And when it changes, hopefully the body and that spiritual need, that need for intimacy, are changing at the same time. But we all know that it's not necessarily true. That sometimes we want things that the body doesn't want anymore, or we want things that the body really wants, but in certain days won't do. And so that brings all of that in. And for those who've gotten to be some of those ages, what you suddenly know if you're doing therapy is that, that's not the first time I felt that. I may be 60 and on beta blockers now, and so something's happening physically that doesn't go along with my libido. And then you realize that's not the first time that happened, that's happened a number of times during life, and you get to turn that lens back and say, wow, there's been a number of occasions in my life when I was worried about what I wanted and the other issues that go with sexuality. So I think for today, what I'd like for us to think about a little bit is that there are tools in Buddhism for us to use so that sexuality continues to be and becomes and is enhanced as a positive experience. And the ones I want to offer right now are the 4 Brahma Viharas, and some of you may be familiar with those. And briefly, they're loving kindness, compassion, joy, and equanimity. And so there's like these simple tools, right? And so the first one is loving kindness. And loving kindness is basically just soft affection for yourself and others. And I'm going to read you a little metta prayer that I've used before when we're done, and be happy to send it to anybody by email. But loving kindness basically says, you know what? I'm all right, just like I am. If I wake up in the morning and I have some desires, I have some feelings, that's okay. And all Buddhist practice talks about notice what comes up in terms of my desire, in terms of my arousal, in terms of my behavior. Notice what comes up, and don't use your discerning, judgmental mind at first. Just notice. And we have the ability then to notice where it comes from, perhaps. But the loving kindness says, and that's all right. It's all right. You look at somebody in your office and think, wow, that would be kind of fun. And it's not going to happen because that person is married to your boss. So for most of us, it's not going to happen. Unless you're on Mad Men on TV and saying it, then it's going to happen. But for most of us, it's not going to happen, and so we're going to think about it, and we're going to do some of the other things. But the simple notion that it comes up, I mean, I don't know about any of you, if you've had those days where you're really thinking that you're a spiritually evolved person, and you would never objectify other human beings, and you're really a good soul, and then you walk down the street and it's the buns and basket day. That's all you see the whole week. Yeah. The most spiritually evolved in the room are now laughing. It's like things come up, and what we tend to do is say, "Oh, I feel so awful that I'm doing that. I feel, I don't want to be that person. I don't want to be, and you know what? We are, and it's okay as long as we are living a evolved and evolving life, so that you notice that it's coming up, and you notice that perhaps you need to pay a little more attention to the person that you're encountering. So that's loving kindness is the first one. Compassion is the second one. And compassion is both for yourself and for the people in our lives that we're dealing with. And so that compassion notion to me is, when we're in a relationship, we're trying to be in a relationship, for instance, when we're trying to figure out what we want to do sexually, and we're in that stage of negotiating, So we're human beings, and we figure out what we want, we figure out, nobody here has probably ever manipulated anyone else to get exactly the sex you want. Yeah, and so compassion is we're hopefully doing the best we can, and we're learning from each experience, and we're becoming more compassionate with the other person because we're becoming more compassionate with ourselves. So sex is a very complicated thing. It has meaning. There's assignments of meaning by other folks. There's our assumption about what other people are thinking, and so if we can be compassionate, we're doing a good job of evolving as human beings and changing over the lifespan. And we treat ourselves with compassion, and the practices that we then are more likely to treat others with compassion. The joy part of the four Brahma Viharas is joy actually for others generally, that where you feel empathetic and sympathetic joy for other people. So when somebody says, I went away on a cruise and spent 2 months in France, I met an airline pilot who's very wealthy and loves me, and he has a house in Paris and a house here now. And in order so he can get around when he's here, he just bought a Jaguar, which he's going to let me use when he's not here. And the sex is terrific and lasts for hours, and he's very caring for me. And our response to him would be, or her, would response would be, I hope you fall off a bridge. It's just not fair. That's who I was looking for. And then we go back to compassion and say, okay, sex stuff is all mixed up, and you've got it and I don't. And what this Brahma Vihara is talking about is my ability to actually say, well, I'm really happy for you. And I'm really happy for you because the fact is that if you were able to articulate what you were looking for and then do the next right thing and find it, that means the rest of us can do that too. And that's an action that we have to take, right? Celebrating that someone has figured out what he or she wants, that they were able to make themselves available to life in a way that happened, should make us very joyful. And sometimes it does. And that takes us to the fourth one, which is equanimity. And as we know, equanimity is finding some balance. Some balance between the days when we feel like if I don't find a partner today, I'm just going to curl up in a ball and die. And the day when you think, I'm a single person and I've always wanted to be a single, you sound like Rhoda from the old Mary Tyler Moore. I've always wanted to be single, and I'm just colorful and no one could ever fit into my, And the balance is finding some place where it's like we sit quietly with our Buddhist practice and say, what is it that I want?